evening, everyone. We're in the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish on Tuesday, April 3rd. Health and Squallow and Peace Tilakmak, Classical Homish, Whale welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There's an amended agenda in front of Council. One proclamation request has been deferred, and I believe that's the only amendment. Motion.
Oh, and the motion. Oh, you just.
And we are going to add to, under business arising from the minutes, a motion for council to consider that the regular business meeting of April 17th be held at the 55 Activity Center. Move to amended agenda, moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Black and move. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. We have 3 delegations. First up, I don't see her, is Bianca Peters, so we'll wait for that one. But I do see Diana Gunstone in the audience, so come on up. This is a request to proclaim National Volunteers Week.
Right. Sorry, this is my first time.
Yeah, so you just come up to the podium and...
Okay. So, Mayor Heisen and Council, thank you. My name is Diana Gunstone, and I'm here on behalf of the Squamish Nonprofit Network. And we would like to request the proclamation of April 15th to the 21st as National Volunteer Week in Squamish. Volunteers support a variety of nonprofits in our community, as well as committees and events, providing invaluable human resources that teach, that mentor, that lead, that design, that build, facilitate, they support, they nurture, they heal, they coach, as well as promote and engage and develop and grow members of our community. Many organizations in Squamish rely on volunteers such as the Food Bank, the Hospice Society, Squamish Helping Hands, Squamish CAN, Squamish sports teams and clubs, Squamish Arts Council, and many, many more. So we feel that National Volunteer Week is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the value of volunteering in our community. And on April 20th, the Squamish Nonprofit Network is delighted to co-host with the District of Squamish a breakfast with the mayor, again to celebrate the role that volunteers play in our community. So I ask if for your consideration to proclaim the National Volunteer Week of April 15th to the 21st in our community.
Thanks, and I'm happy to move that. Is there a second? Second by Councillor Elliott. And I think this is the 3rd breakfast we've done.
It is.
For volunteers, and really they are the foundations of the community. They provide so much value, as you articulated so well. So it's the least we can do to honor them and to hopefully inspire new volunteers too. So
Yes. Thank
awesome.
you.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thanks, Dana. Excuse me. Next up, we have Christopher Hill Squamish Sunday Social Event. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, members of council. Thanks for getting me, Madam Mayor. I recently moved back to the area about 2.5 years ago. Fell in love with Squamish in about '98. Used to come up here quite a bit. I worked with the Witness Project, and then up in the Ilaho Valley, doing a lot of events called EcoFest, which resulted in closing down or shutting down the clear-cut logging that was going up there. Done a lot of gatherings and events up in the valley, and especially up in Whistler as well, and worked a lot in the Vancouver area. I call Squamish my home now. I've been producing special events for about 30 years now. And, you know, one thing I'd like to see in Squamish is a little bit more community cohesiveness. It's growing exponentially, and it doesn't seem to be able to catch up to itself. And there's a lot of great people here, and I feel like we need a community social, a Sunday social event to bring people together, essentially. So what I'd like to do is organize Sunday afternoons in the park at the Pavilion, and with all the contacts of artists, promoters, technical teams and so forth, I can put together a free music event every Sunday afternoon. It's not going to be every Sunday afternoon because a lot of those dates are already taken. However, there are about 8 or 9 dates that are still available. And you know, I'm basically willing to present this to the public for free. Of course, the music and the programming will be family appropriate. We're not going to have, you know, raging metal or techno or anything like that, but nonetheless a good afternoon in the park for people to get together and dance and socialize. So I'm basically coming before you today to ask if you could waive the rental fee for this stage, considering that I'm doing it for free and this is a gift to the community. And if you'd honor that, then this would enable me to be able to provide the service to the community in that way.
Thank you. Any questions at this point? I'm gonna probably go to Christine, maybe just to outline, it's for $384 approximate, and anything within our policies that would prevent us from doing something like this?
No, I don't believe so. Mayor Heinzman, and can council contingencies available for this type of thing?
And just to clarify, it's a free event and it's a non-profit event, nobody's...
Yeah, like I've already presented the thought of going to some organizations and businesses and asking for like minor sponsorship just to cover like the expenses of hiring these acts and stuff. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'll put like 30, 40 hours a week into this and I might get paid for 10 of those hours, so it's certainly not for profit. Yeah. And just, I may add too, sorry to mention, Bianca Peters, I believe her last name is, she's intending to do a market there as well. We've already met and spoken about this, and so we feel our efforts would complement each other quite nicely.
Yeah.
She's got all the, you know, the stipulations in place and licensing and permits and washrooms and everything else. So.
From my perspective, I'd love to see us animate that space more, so I'm happy to support this request for $348.25 for waiving of the fees for the pavilion. Moved by Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Chappelle. Thanks for
Thank you.
volunteering. We love
Absolutely.
volunteers.
Yeah, hopefully it goes
I'll
out
call
there.
the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, Bianca, I'm wondering if we just want to entertain the motion to proclaim BC Heritage Fair the week of July 8th, 4th to 8th. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Elliott, and if Ms. Peters shows up and wants to speak real briefly, we'll facilitate that. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. Is there an emergent issue that needs to be addressed by council before the next council meeting? I don't see anybody. We have no public hearings. 7A1, District of Squamish zoning bylaw, number 2011 amendment bylaw, Plaza at Junction Park, number 2527, 2017.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight, I'm presenting a rezoning application for 37870 Cleveland Avenue for consideration of first reading. Proposed zoning amendment bylaw number 2527 was presented request to rezone the lands from CD 37 to a new comprehensive development zone to allow for a mixed commercial and residential development named Plaza at Junction Park. The proposed development is located downtown in a transitional area between the downtown commercial core and district parks, downtown south, and the gateway to the Squamish oceanfront area. The lot is 1.65 acres and comprises a full downtown block, bordered by Main Street to the north, Vancouver Street to the south, Locust Lane to the east, and Cleveland Avenue to the west. For context, the east is the deactivated rail line in vacant lands, zoned I3. To the west is the House Sound Inn and Brew Pub, the Studio SQ, and the future main mixed-use development, zone C4, C10, and CD42. On the south, there's vacant lands and the Cattermole Slough, zoned I3, and to the north is Junction Park, zone P3. The OCP land use designation is downtown. The current zoning is CD37. And it is located in the DPA 3 downtown south. For the future OCP land use designation is Downtown Commercial Center, and the future DPAs will be DPA 3 Universal Guidelines and DPA 5 Commercial Center. So the property formerly known as Pac West was first rezoned in 2007, followed by an approved development permit. The development was never built, and the permit expired. An application to rezone the property again was received in March of 2017. Over a year ago. Since then, the proposal has been preliminary reviewed by council at 3 separate community development standing committee meetings to help define and guide the direction of the proposed rezoning. The applicant proposes to rezone the land to a new comprehensive development zone 37 and thereby replace the existing CD 37 zone. 2 mixed-use buildings with commercial office and residential uses are proposed. The northern building is 6 stories, with the north end proposed at 4 stories, and the southern building is 8 stories in height. 154 residential units are proposed, which is comprised of 43,700 square feet of employment space is also proposed for a total density of 2.25 FAR. The proposed design intends to meet zoning bylaw parking requirements, and the site plan shown here outlines the general layout of the 2 buildings. I'll run through various aspects and highlights of the proposal in the next few slides. Variation in height, shape, and massing between the buildings. You can see through these visuals here. The height for the C4 zone is a maximum of 20 meters, where this revised CD37 zone will offer a variation of heights from 27 meters to 15 meters. Commercial uses front Cleveland Avenue, Main Street, and Vancouver Street, wrapping around the central mid-block plaza and fronting at key locations along Lockers Lane. At-grade commercial fronting all streets activates the pedestrian realm, and through-block connections are lined with commercial uses to activate these public plaza areas and establish strong east-west pedestrian connections. Public open spaces at street ends and in mid-block connections, complete with landscaping, weather protection, and seating, offer opportunities for adjacent commercial units to open up and spill out into the plaza and street. Ample public plaza spaces are proposed at the north and south ends of the development, as well as a central through plaza. Public spaces are located at grade, and common usable open spaces are also located at the 3rd level, with large patio spaces. The development includes viewscapes between the 3 building masses. The rendering to the left shows views from the Studio SQ, preserving viewscapes of the Chief, and significant step backs of the south building is proposed for the Vancouver Street end, which will help to preserve viewscapes from the Howe Sound Brew Pub. The viewscapes will also open up more light and decrease the amount of shading on the surrounding streets and properties. The combined total of the commercial and office space is 27% of the development's total gross floor area, which exceeds the district's 20% employment space in the C4 zone. This is outside of the Cleveland High Street area. 25% was proposed in the previous design, reviewed by council in March, and this was increased by adding additional commercial floor area along Lockers Lane. Commercial uses front Cleveland Avenue, Main Street, and Vancouver Street, wrapping around the central mid-block plaza and fronting at key locations along Lockers Lane. The 182-meter-long Cleveland frontage is broken up into 11 distinct frontages with varying widths to help generally conform and preserve the small-scale store frontage character of Cleveland. The development aims to further conform to the recent downtown zoning amendments for Cleveland Avenue High Street. The new Cleveland regulations were designed to preserve the small parcels, low density, and existing character of the Cleveland Street. As this is a large vacant parcel located across from 6 and 4-story buildings, the proposal seeks to meet the intent of the Cleveland High Street regulations while also aligning with the massing and scaling of the surrounding properties. So the FRR proposed is 2.25, which is 0.75 more than the allowed 1.5 FAR for large lots on Cleveland. But they also, for the upper story step backs, the proposed 3rd and 4th upper story step backs conform to the High Street step back regulations, but the upper stories beyond the 4th story do not conform. But just to note that this regulation for the Cleveland High Street was not created to accommodate stories above 6. So the applicant's proposed CAC exceeds the district's forthcoming CAC policy, which is currently in progress. A detailed table can be found in the report, but for simplicity, a complete list and breakdown is summarized on the slide, and include 12% affordable rental housing units, which equates to 18 units, 8% purpose-built market rental housing units, which equates to 13 units, 10% adaptable housing units, which equates to 15 units, and public plaza. So they'll be building the public plaza between Junction Park and the development property within the Main Street Road right-of-way, which would also include renovations to open up the south side of the OC Pavilion. 2 car share stalls have also been included as an amenity, as well as $39,281 cash to the additional park and active transportation. So this is an addition to the public plaza that they'll be creating. And there's also an addition of $23,016 cash to meet the $3 a square foot of multifamily. And this is to pay for the rental, the increase in the rental density. So these items not only meet the policy targets, but all the items highlighted in yellow arrows also exceed the policy targets. So the development proposal is consistent with OCP land use and policy, which directs multifamily development to the downtown and encourages mixed-use development. Downtown integration with increased pedestrian connectivity and parkland connectivity are key elements, as is the activation of street frontages. The proposal is also consistent with the forthcoming OCP update. The project was posted to the district's development showcase. One request for a public information meeting was made. To date, no public information meeting has been held, but the applicant is open to hosting one. And as staff are recommending that a public information meeting be held to address any questions or concerns the community may have prior to the public hearing. One public comment has been received to date, and it is in support of the project. If the project application proceeds past second reading, public hearing notices will be sent to the property owners and tenants within 100 meters, and newspaper ads will be placed in the Squamish Chief. Any public comment received through the public hearing notification will be provided to council in advance of the meeting. The project aligns with the district's OCP policies, and the applicant has worked extensively with staff over the past year to develop and refine the proposal. Staff's recommendation to council is to approve first reading of Amendment Law 2527, along with a number of conditions to be met prior to public hearing and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to council for any questions. I have a question. On the north side, adjacent to the pavilion, there would be frontage costs associated with that if we weren't making that a plaza, or we were considering making that a plaza. We haven't determined precisely if we are or not. But what would those frontage costs? Because I'm trying to understand how we evaluated the value of that plaza. And we don't tend to put community amenity contributions adjacent to developments that augment the development. So I'm trying to understand the value of the CAC, essentially.
That's a great question. We did have it as part of, I'm just going to highlight where it's highlighted here. So if you look at the RTC, so the report, and you look at table 3.
Can you tell me the page number, please?
Yeah, it would be on 5 and 6. You'll be able to see that we've highlighted an estimated value that the frontage improvements, so the regular improvements that would be required with this development, would be let me just get this right. Would be, so the value of the public plaza upgrades would be a value of $300,000 more than what the estimated cost of the frontage upgrades would be. So I think the estimate was that the frontage upgrades would cost $100,000. So this would be regularly if we didn't create a plaza, and the creation of the plaza is an additional $300,000. Is that clear?
Yeah. That's on page 16 of your agenda, Council. I wanted you to articulate that out loud because I'm I'm trying to wrap my head around whether or not the plaza should be used as a community menu contribution, or not. Councillor Pryor.
Yeah, thanks. So that's sidewalks, curbs and gutters to the center of the road?
The improvements to the plaza would.
No, the
To the
improvements.
frontage.
To the frontage would include curb and gutter, sidewalks, any of the regular upgrades that would be required in our subdivision development control bylaw.
And so, and I know I asked this last time when I saw it. This property was zoned for 60% lot coverage, 4 stories. How many units was that? How many more units was that?
Through you, Mayor, I'd have to find an answer to that, particularly for how many more units. But the community amenity contribution that is put forward here, if you can look at that table again, as per our new policy, and this is updated from I think it was last presented to council in February of 2018, there's 2 sections, section 7 and section 8. Section 7 is to meet the increased residential density on the site. And the options that you can choose are option A, which is to provide affordable housing units, and as well as a public, a park or adaptive transportation amenity. The option B in that table, it's not in here per se, but it's in our policy, would be to provide a certain amount per square footage of increased density. So the option that this applicant has chosen is to take the affordability route. The target amount is 10% and the applicant has provided 12.
And just to clarify, the current zoning, it's a CD zone, and it allows for 1.39 FAR in the zoning bylaw. But this is FSR. We evaluate a little bit differently because we don't include parking and interior spaces, correct?
Through you, Mayor, I believe that we use the definition FAR here. We don't have an FSR.
Okay, so
and
it's
usually
apples to apples.
it usually means the same thing. Yeah.
So it's going from 1.39 to 1.75 FAR,
2 point.
correct?
Could you repeat? Sorry.
I think Councillor Pryor was trying to understand the lift compared to the current zoning and the new zoning. And the current zoning, of course, had a lift from the original zoning with amenities included in that. We're upzoning again.
And to clarify the question around how many units, so the DP 237 was approved in 2005 or 2007 was at 82 units, and this is 154 units.
I think it's been addressed. Okay.
Okay. Council, any questions for clarification purposes? Councilor Lee?
I know that we are looking at the step code that's coming through the province and talked this afternoon about looking at adopting step 3. Is step 3 something we could make conditional on rezoning?
Absolutely. We can put it in the land development agreement.
Council, any questions?
To staff on the, and I know we talked about it today, we also talked about it last week, getting 3D renderings where you walk through it. Is this project not going to bring that forward?
Through you, Mayor, this is still first reading. 3D renderings could potentially be something that we could look at later on, or is also something that might be more appropriate for a development permit application to when they
have
see the
3D
details.
renderings now, but I'm just saying that, you know, we talked about it a few times as council and then the ADP about the larger projects bringing in a walkthrough the relationship of buildings to their neighborhood. You know, I mean, you know, I do have a couple of concerns, but when we're off questions, I'll bring those up.
Yeah, I'm just doing questions for timing, Councilor Strong.
This is the only, I'm just looking at where bikes travel. This is the main chunk of our downtown, so is there a bike lane on either side, Loggers Lane or Cleveland Avenue?
So through your mayor, the active transportation plan, it highlights that Main Street would be a separated bike lane. And in this design, this may not be the appropriate rendering for it, but you can highlight that if you look at this pavement here on the left-hand side in that image, that will be intended to be designed to be a separated bike lane as well as a fire access for emergency vehicles. So
On Main Street though?
On Main Street.
What is the continuation? This is the continuation to our oceanfront area, so what is the active transportation route between either, it has to be either Cleveland or Loggers. Is it going to be built, this project has to have an active transportation on one of those routes, otherwise it won't be included.
So at this time, the north-south connections are intended to be on 3rd Avenue. And if there is, at the moment, the rail line is not district property and we don't have a lot of space there. So at this time, we can't put bike lanes are separated. We don't have the space to do that. But the intention is hopefully down the line that would evolve into a separated bike lane route on the east side.
Okay, so on
For
the
Loggers.
other side of Loggers, and I'm just wondering about commercial, having a high street and a commercial space, and I really like the amount of employment space. I would like there to be some active transportation to be able to get there. And I think, 3rd Avenue is a far way away from our high street. We need an active transportation route. I don't think we can start building Cleveland Avenue without looking at either Loggers Lane or Cleveland having a bike lane. And I don't even mind if it's not separated, but enough space so the bike can travel safely, not just all parking in cars.
So through you, Mayor, at this time, Cleveland Avenue is a shared bike route. It is not designated as a separated bike route or a bike lane in our active transportation plan. The long-term vision is to have Loggers be that connection. So there is a long-term vision for that, but we can't, through this application, we can't get space. We only have enough space for the road and sidewalks at this time. We can't ask it.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah, Councilor Elliott?
So in looking at the CACs, I think the one thing that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is that the plaza is our road. And in providing that road to be used as a plaza would provide a lift to that property. Otherwise it just has a sidewalk. And so did we contemplate what that value is to the property in terms of our CACs?
So through your mayor, the CAC policy that we're working with is the provision of publicly accessible active transportation and park amenities. And the intention to meet that objective was that these improvements would happen near the development and they would benefit the neighboring park or the neighboring active transportation route. So these improvements do, through staff's view, align with that policy. And they are, we put a value to it, an estimated value to show the additional amount of funds that would be required to meet that. And it is actually exceeds what our cash contribution for that. So you either provide the amenity or you pay the cash in lieu, and the proposed $300,000 is much more than what that cash in lieu would look like. Does that help answer?
What would the cash in lieu look like?
Your
cash in lieu.
It would be 100,077 $177 hundreds and $600, sorry.
that helpful?
It's a little bit helpful.
And that's based on $3, that's based on not the new CIC policy.
Yeah, it's based on the new, so the cash and lieu equivalent is $1 per square foot of multifamily towards active transportation and 50 cents per square foot of multifamily to parks. And so adding those two totals up gives you that total.
No, but the new policy that you had adopted, it doesn't come close to that policy.
This is the policy we're
This is
talking
the
about.
February policy.
I thought we took away I thought we said it could go to anything council wants.
It could, but that's just how we generate that target. So that's the formula we would use to generate the target, and then the money could go anywhere.
It's- I remember council asking for that. That's why I remember that it wasn't contemplated until, I believe it was Councilor Race proposed that, and we thought it was a great idea, so, as a public amenity, so I thought this was a council-generated idea, not a, yeah, yeah.
Well, how about a pedestrian overpass? That was a council idea too. Um, Well, this is breaking new ground, this building, being 8 stories. And this is not questions now.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a motion on the floor then?
No,
Well, let's put something on the floor so we can debate something. Councilor Spa?
I'll move first reading.
Move first reading, and there's a whole slew of conditions and stuff. You're moving the whole thing.
Yes,
Seconded by
for discussion.
Councilor Kent, Councilor Pryor, and then Councilor Elliott.
okay.
Unless you have more questions,
I wanted to make a friendly amendment.
you can make that after Councilor Pryor.
Well, I mean, I would really, really like to see the drive-through. You know, like the 3D rendering where you can drive down the street. And I know that, you know, none of the pictures really clearly indicate the brew pub on there, in my opinion. You know, if it doesn't show the brew pub. And for right or wrong, my fear is that perhaps we don't really understand how big this building is. And it was funny because I saw a crane down the street and it was pumping concrete and it had its boom straight up. And I thought, oh, there it is. Here's the height of that building. And I thought, if only I could get that guy to come up to City Hall and lift his boom up so we could all go out and see the height. Well, it wasn't. It was 20 feet shorter than the height. And so, you know, here we've had 3 meetings at this, and I've questioned this each time, and keep moving forward. You know, and I get the feeling staff like it. And so that's good for the proponent. And I don't think we're getting enough amenities out of something that's this much of a change for the community. And, you know, I get beat up all the time on social media with some of the buildings that we designed in the past. You know, and I stick up for everybody and I try to say my best, but I have to say some of them haven't been as good as I hoped when I look back at them now, towering over, you know. And Saltair has been a good corporate entity in our town for 15, 20 years. And I look at this as potentially, I think Mike said it was their last really developable piece of property and they can't find anything else. And so it makes me look at all the developments near the affordable housing over near the seniors, and then you start going around the town, you see all the nice developments that they put in. Done a really good job. So I just think on this one, you know, we need a new city hall, we need a new ice skating rink, we just need all this stuff. I don't think generally we're charging enough amenities to the big earth-changing ones. The top floors of this building, well, actually, you know, it's a prime location, it's a waterfront development site, They'll be top valued, and knowing the Solterra Group, they'll be top dollar, 180 units. And, you know, I keep going for the pedestrian overpass because I think Loggers Lane coming soon will be so busy that it won't matter if we have a park on the other side because nobody's crossing the street to get to it. And so I'm not going to support it until I see the amenity package beefed up a bit. And I'm just saying that because, and I know we're following policy, and I don't want everyone to get mad, but I talked to somebody that was an administrator of a bigger district than ours, and I complained about the fact that I didn't think we were getting enough amenities, and the guy said, yeah, council is the amenities. If you don't like it, don't pass it. If you're not getting enough, just don't pass it. So the message I'm sending, I'm not necessarily saying I like it or don't like it, I want to see the walkthrough so the community can actually see what's going to be down there. And I'm not going to support it saying I want to see more amenities. I'd like to see a pedestrian overpass, and if it's not off this development, it would be up at Victoria Street where we're proposing the bridge going across to Mike's uncle's development. So that's all I can say.
Charlie?
Just quick question to staff. If we wanted to include the step 3 building code, would we include it here or at the DP? I'm wondering what amendment I would suggest to the mover if I put it here.
It should be here. The motion should be done amended to include that as a condition.
So if the mover is amenable, I'd like to move that we require this building to comply with this.
Why don't we just formally put forward a motion, an amendment to the motion?
And I think amend the motion.
Okay,
Just put an amendment forward.
I'll put an amendment forward to the motion that we include as a requirement of rezoning that the building achieve step 3 in the minimum step 3.
Second by Councillor Rose. Any discussion on the amendment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Is that the amendment or the motion?
Just for the amendment. Motion carries unanimously. On the motion as amended, anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot about this development that I like right now. I think that one of the things that confuses me a little bit is that when we were doing the Cleveland Avenue frontage changes, we asked staff why we weren't moving it all the way down to Vancouver Street, and they said, well, that's going to be a rezoning, and so we can achieve those same things. But even on the 6-story building, we're not achieving the setbacks as we've requested for the rest of Cleveland. So that concerns me a little bit because I feel like we've moved the bar. We haven't achieved that in this rezoning. But I do like the affordable rental and the purpose-built rental, and I think the community should have an opportunity to comment on this, so I'm happy to support first reading.
Councillor Reyes?
Thank you. And I'm also going to support first reading. This is, as the report and the presentation stated, this has been before council at the committee level several times. We've watched it and commented on it and saw it go through some evolution and different iterations to this point, which is where I feel it is now worthy of going through the public process and having the public comment on it. I personally am satisfied with the amenities, and it took me a while, let me say, to kind of get my head around it. But first of all, it's not like we're starting off at zero. That site already has zoning rights, and so we're just talking about the difference. Secondly, our policy says you can provide affordable housing or cash, and this chose to provide affordable housing and in fact exceeded our targets. So I think if there's something wrong with that, then it's our policy that we have to look to. We cannot penalize a proponent for adhering to or exceeding our policy goals. And if it was just cash, it seems like a relatively small number, but that's because we're only talking about the difference. So I find there's certain attractive features to this that are, I think, something that can go to the public, so I will be supporting it at this stage.
This is the first comprehensive building I've seen since the Cornerstone, and I appreciate the amount of employment space that these buildings bring. It's not the first large building. The first large building is across the street at the Main, and the appreciation for the view corridors as well. The fact that you'll still be able to sit on the patio at the brew pub and be able to see through to the water, I appreciate. And I think it's completely supportable at first reading. would like to hear how the public feels about it. I like the public plaza and the fact that the community will have a little bit more space for enjoying the amenities around there. So I will be supporting first reading.
Councillor Patton.
Yeah, I think as Doug always says, this checks off most of the boxes, and I think some of those boxes were pre-designed by council themselves, so I will support this.
I will speak to this. I'm a little challenged by this one, not that I don't like the idea or the concept of the building, but I am trying to understand the value proposition with regard to the amenities. The current zoning, for example, offers 129 square meters of civic space, which if you even just simple math at $300 a square foot is well over $400,000 just for that civic space that's currently in the current CD zone. So, and there was a land lift when it went from industrial zoning to CD 39 or whatever CD this is. And so I'm just trying to reconcile those things. Council did talk about opposing Main Street. I certainly never thought of it as the amenity that this building would provide, however. So I have some concerns. I thought it would align a little bit more with what the Cleveland Avenue directives were going to be, because that's how it was presented from staff originally. It would be evaluated in that context when rezoning came, and it doesn't quite meet those standards. So I think it's in the ballpark to give first reading, but there are some things that still I'm challenged here that I have to reconcile in my own mind before I can actually support this. But I'll support this reading. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, Councillor Fire opposes. Motion carries. So the proponent will have a public information meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to first and second reading, District of Squamish zoning bylaw under 2020-2011 amendment bylaw 37781 Cleveland Avenue. 2565 2017.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner here at the District of Squamish, presenting to you today rezoning amendment bylaw 2565-2017 for a property located at 27781 Cleveland Avenue. In the new OCP, the property is within the new Downtown South land use and the new development permit area 7, named Downtown South. It would also be subject to DPA 1, environmental protection, and DPA 3, universal guidelines in the new OCP. The property is currently zoned general industrial, which is I3. It currently houses...
Councilor Fry, do you have something to say?
Yeah, so I'm in conflict on this one there, because I sold the corner of the property.
And you have property on that side.
Thank you.
Thanks, continue.
It currently houses a number of shipping containers for the presumable use of storage. The properties adjacent surrounding properties to the north and south both have I3 zoning. The north property is currently a legal non-conforming single-family home, while the south property seems to exhibit general industrial and storage uses compliant with the I3 zone. The property is surrounded by light industrial I1 zoning to the east and to the west, and the property's entrance is uniquely located at the end of Cleveland Avenue. This portion of Cleveland Avenue is not built to today's streetscape standards and is currently used as a driveway access to some Cleveland Avenue properties, as well as a pedestrian and cycling entrance to the Turtle Trail. To the best of staff's knowledge, no previous land development applications have been brought to council for this specific property. This I-3 site proposes to rezone to the new MUD 2 zone to permit a 2-building mixed-use development incorporating 5 residential apartment uses, roughly as you see here, and 270 meters squared of commercial space. The buildings are proposing to take advantage of 2 density bonuses written into the MUD 2 zone. The building facing Cleveland Avenue proposes 75% of 5-meter ground floor ceiling heights to achieve a building height of 15.6 meters. This height bonus from 10.68 meters is built into the MUD 2 zone to incentivize higher ground floor ceiling heights to achieve creative and versatile artisan employment in light industrial spaces. The development proposes that 20% of the residential units will be dedicated rental as per MUD 2 residential density bonus to achieve a 70% residential gross floor area. This residential bonus from 50% to 70% is built into the MUD 2 zone to incentivize the creation of dedicated rental units in exchange for more residential density. The proposed residential GFA is 66% of the total gross floor area. The building facing the lane is proposed at the height of 8.5 meters and offers 2 live-work units, as well as 2 commercial units on the 2nd story above an open parking garage. The proposal also includes a unique ground floor through block walkway and an internal courtyard to provide pedestrian permeability through the site, as you can see identified by the red arrows. The preliminary designs include all required 5 residential parking stalls and 1 required commercial parking stall to allow for a maximum of 5 cash and loop commercial stalls, a total of $75,000 cash and loop. An on-street front loading bay is proposed off Cleveland, and there are no variances proposed with this development at this time. Should the rezoning be successful and the project proceed, the form and character of the proposed development could potentially be subject to new OCP development permit guidelines and will be reviewed by the advisory design panel and by council at a future date. Should the OCP not be adopted by the time of rezoning, a condition of adoption would be to secure these new guidelines in the land development agreement. So as mentioned earlier, the property's entrance is uniquely located at the end of Cleveland Avenue. This portion of the Cleveland Avenue is not built to today's streetscape standards and is currently used as a driveway access to some Cleveland Avenue properties, as well as a pedestrian and cycling entrance to the church trail. As part of this proposal, the application is also proposing to activate Cleveland Avenue through additional landscaping, seating, and public art planters to accommodate electrical and utility hookups for food trucks. Cleveland Avenue will need to be designed to accommodate emergency vehicles access and existing driveway access. However, as this area transitions, as depicted in this rendering, this would be a number of other MUD 2 zones. The intention is for the space to be further redeveloped as a predominant pedestrian plaza. The plaza vision for Cleveland Avenue is in line with the Downtown South engagement comments, which we received with the creation of the MUD 2 zone when we did that community engagement. So this rezoning also includes an amendment to the MUD 2 zone. The creative mixed-use zone was recently adopted by council on December 19th in 2017. It was created specifically for the Downtown South area and was created to preserve the existing eclectic and small-scale artisan light industrial feel of the area, while supporting residential density and redevelopment. To create this feel, MUD 2 zone calculates density through 2 regulations, height and lot coverage. The existing MUD 2 zone proposed 55% lot coverage, a significant decrease from both the I-3 and I-1 zones that allow for 70% and 75% lot coverage. As this is the second property to bring forward a rezoning to MUD 2, it has come to staff's attention that 55% lot coverage may be too restrictive for small lots, which make up the majority of the Downtown South area. Therefore, as part of the property rezoning, staff are also proposing to increase the allowable lot coverage in the MUD 2 zone from 55% to 60%. So the developer is offering to provide a community amenity contribution of $34,050 specifically for above and beyond upgrades to Cleveland Avenue frontage. This equates to $6 per square foot of residential space. Base Cleveland Avenue upgrades required at servicing agreement are estimated to close to $100,000. The cash contribution would be above and beyond upgrades to the street through additional landscaping, street activation, planters, and storyteller quarantine steel planters, as roughly proposed in the previous slides. This community amenity is not in line with the CAC interim policy on the new draft CAC target, or that was last discussed with Council in February this year. That is because, as you can see here, although they are meeting the 6 square foot target, the contributions are not going towards affordable housing, general amenities, and childcare. And with the new policy, they are meeting the active transportation park amenity, however, are not meeting the $15 per square footage target. So staff believe the CAC contribution should be more in line with the new draft policy, but support the contribution towards Cleveland Avenue upgrades. Staff also recommend that the CAC negotiations be resolved prior to public hearing. So the land development agreement will include upgrades to both Cleveland Avenue and Lane from the south property line to Vancouver Street. Half of the ditch is located in the lane and classified as yellow minimal productive habitat, and the ditch will trigger DPA 1 environment protection at the development permit stage, and a report by a qualified environmental professional will be required. The site is within a secondary floodway and is a conditional densification area. As the lot coverage proposed is less than the existing zoning, which is I3, the development is likely to have no impact on the floodway, and flood modeling would not be required. The qualified professional review will be required before adoption. So the project was posted to the district's development showcase in December of 2017. No requests for a public information meeting were made, and no public information meeting was held. No comments have been received to date, and public notification procedures will be undertaken should council confirm the public hearing. This rezoning is in line with the following priority areas of community, economy, maximize built environment, and balanced and resilient economy. The proposed Cleveland Avenue Plaza further meets council's guiding principles of connected community. In attachment 1, you can find a detailed table listing how the proposed development is aligned with a number of official community plan policies in 2014 draft downtown neighborhood plan policies. A brief summary is provided on the slide and range from housing diversity to increased employment space and opportunity to enhancing public realm and downtown vibrancy. Staff recommendations are that council approve the following resolution to give first and second reading to amendment bylaw 2565 2017 and to schedule a public hearing date for May 1st, 2018. Thank you.
Questions? Shelley?
Just a question, staff, you said you wanted to resolve the CAC issue before public hearing. So does that date give you enough time?
We would rely on council's input on the CAC proposal from the applicant and discuss the feedback from council after the meeting. And then if there are any changes or not, we would bring that to the public hearing. But with the understanding that there would have to be another public hearing if anything changes after that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we should work on the CACs. They're not sufficient.
I think this speaks a little bit again to doing frontage improvements as a CAC. And that, I don't think that's how our CAC policy was conceived, to just simply augment the frontage. The same case in the last application. That's certainly not how I've ever conceived of the CACs. Therefore, the general community has benefit, not necessarily just an improvement to the exterior of a particular development. Councilor Schnabel.
How much commercial does a larger building have? Does it meet the commercial policy of 20%? 20%?
So through you, Mayor, it meets, it's not a commercial policy, it's the MUD 2 zone, and the MUD 2 zone for this particular design requires 30% commercial and 70% residential. So this one's achieving the 30%.
Sorry.
Thank you. I have to say one of the things that caught my attention was the Cleveland Avenue Plaza on the road right of way. And some years ago, the Cleveland Avenue was designated to be the main access to the ocean front. And I know, thinking back to when the present proponent was making presentations and bringing forward plans, the alternative along Loggers Lane and Galbraith was proposed to get to their property. But I came away from all of that thinking that there was flexibility at some point when the end of Cleveland Avenue was developed, that ultimately Cleveland Avenue would go through and in some fashion connect to the oceanfront. But I gather we're moving away from that, and frankly that was a bit of a surprise to me. So, you know, in my mind it's separate from this and this development. It's our issue, I think, as a district, and I think it's something that's worthy of a discussion about what our vision for the future of that road is, because it goes, of course, much farther than the land. It goes over water, and I think it even touches land again, if I'm not mistaken, on one of the overheads. So that to me is a discussion point. But I guess my question is then, the whole building is being designed as though there is no vehicle access to the front. It would all be through the back, and the front is pedestrian access only. So if we did decide to put a road through there, people could walk down the sidewalk and enter the building, and cars could drive in the back, just as they're proposed to do. So we're not changing our future necessarily by this particular project. But I think separate from this project, and I'm not suggesting it happen between now and the public hearing, I think it's worthy of a discussion with council about what our vision is for that street and the access to the ocean front. Because unless I missed something along the way, I don't think we've ever resolved to go away from Cleveland Avenue being one of the key accesses to the ocean front.
I believe at this point we are looking at Loggers Lane as being the main access or the main connection to Galbraith Road. I will defer to Gary Buxton.
Yes, my recollection is that issue was, I guess, not resolved to council satisfaction, but resolved from an engineering point of view prior to the sale. The thought of routing traffic in and out of SODC at that time, but oceanfront onto Cleveland seems really counterintuitive from an engineering or traffic management point of view. There are land acquisition costs to get across 1400 Vancouver that would be tricky to deal with. So from an engineering point of view, we had sort of resolved this with a traffic impact study that was done prior to the sale, so sometime late 2015, and it was determined that it just didn't make any sense. I know that I too have seen those drawings that cross 1400 and sort of arc from this point and then deflect east and then south to Galbraith, but from a traffic point of view, it doesn't make any sense to route traffic out of oceanfront right onto Cleveland. It's four-way stop conditions the entire way. There's parking on both sides. It simply can't handle that traffic. It was never going to be able to. So at that point, the engineering decision has been that it works far better to go straight down Loggers, and that's the reason that we have a sort of I want to say a $2 million project for Loggers Lane on the DCC bylaw. Although I can appreciate, I don't recollect how that issue came to council and was resolved. I can't remember that conversation happening either, councillor. So,
if I can just follow up, I don't want to sidetrack this. I mean, because I do think of it as a separate issue. It just came up when I was reading this, so I don't want to sort of go off track tonight. I'll just leave the comment with staff that perhaps it's worthy of a discussion separate from this rezoning proposal in the future. And you may be absolutely right, but if we do have a vision for it, I guess I'd like to see it.
Any more questions from council on this application?
Just curious, you said there was no other comments from any of the neighbors on this proposed development?
There were no official comments that we've received.
Just curious because it would, it's so unlike the rest of the character, which are all general industrial or light industrial to the south of them, that this is certainly going to influence and probably trigger a bunch more like developments once this one goes off to follow suit all the way down to the water. And given that this one particular one is discussing or proposing to do this road treatment at the end, I'm just wondering how that would affect some of the others if they were to follow suit.
So through you, Mayor, maybe I could speak to, as part of the original MUD 2 rezoning, we did do extensive community engagement with the downtown south community around the zone. And there were a number of discussions around using this zone as a viable opportunity for redevelopment in the area. And so I think at that time we did hear a lot of the community's comments around their interest in the zone, and we applied those to the MUD 2 zone. We didn't receive any comments particularly for this rezoning, and the changes that will be made to the Cleveland Avenue frontage will be considerate of the existing driveway accesses that are in use right now. So we'll have to design it, and this would come down to the servicing agreement level, and we'll have further designs at the development permit level around what that looks like. But we will be sensitive to the neighboring properties as the uses are as they're using the properties currently.
Questions, Councillor?
It's a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Staff, so if we wanted to have further discussion around the amenities, one option, I'll put this as a question to staff, one option would be to just go to first reading tonight and second reading later, or first and second reading tonight and hopefully clear up that issue before the public hearing. Does staff have any preference one way or the other?
I think if we go for first and second reading, then what would be useful is very clear direction on what council sees it as an acceptable CAC. If there's flexibility, then I think one reading. Otherwise, we'll be doing another public hearing.
Yeah. I suggest we do first reading and go to a public information meeting. And invite the community, because regardless of how much input they put into the MUD zone, to actually see it manifest in a building is a totally different thing. And as we've seen in the past in this area, it can actually probably help the process if we go to public meeting before it comes back to public hearing. And then I prefer if we consider the second reading after that. And I do think quite a bit of work has to be done on the community amenity side of things to really understand it, taking into consideration some of the Cleveland Avenue stuff that Councillor Rees was saying. That would just be my suggestion to council, but we're still in the question phase of it.
No, not a question. I was going to move it. But
Any
I'll
more
wait.
questions? Councillor Rees?
Well, I'll move first reading. Speaker, if it's second.
Second by Councillor Kent.
Thank you. So, I guess to go directly to it, I agree with the mayor on the first reading versus first and second reading, and I think there is some work to be done on the amenities to bring it up to our current policy. The flexibility, and the reason I don't think we can give specific instruction to staff, at least I can't tonight, is because there are frontage issues there, and if that is going to become some kind of pedestrian plaza, much like the last one, we're going to end up with a public amenity, and so it's partly it helps the building and partly it creates this public amenity, and so I think there's going to be a little bit of discussion around that. But generally speaking, I think I would rather see something that's much closer to our policy. I do think it's an appropriate form of zoning for this area. I like the MUD 2 when it was brought forward as a solution to a previous application that kind of got bogged down. So I think it is certainly something that may be a bit of an eye-opener for the community, but I think if we interpreted their comments correctly on the last one, that hopefully they'll find acceptance there. So I think it is certainly something that should go out to public comment. And so I'm supporting first reading.
Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Well, I really enjoyed seeing this one come forward. I think the concept works for that neighborhood, and I think shows the creativity that's enabled by the MUD zoning. So, so the concept I think is sound, and I think there's just work to be done around the CACs. Like the mayor, it's trying to find that balance between improvements just in front of each building and whether that provides the amenity for the whole neighborhood or for the community as a whole. And so I think there's a discussion to be had. I was surprised that people feel it needs to go to a public meeting at this point. I think we did a lot of engagement, and I would think that a public hearing on this building would be enough. So, but happy to support first reading.
Yeah, I'll speak to it briefly. Like Councillor Elliott, I think the concept is excellent. Without prejudging third reading, it looks pretty cool. I like the idea of it. I just think there's some pieces that need to be worked out. And I'm suggesting the public meeting just because I know this neighborhood, and I think it's in the developer's best interest to just invite that community in to have a look. Be proactive about that engagement. I think it's in the best interest of the developer at this point. Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We are on to 7C1, right? 7C1, adoption, consideration of adoption of the District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw 39666 Government Road, number 2593, 2018. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Blackenwolf. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw, number 2012-2007 Amendment Bylaw, waiving of engineering fees for nonprofit organizations, number 2590-2018. Be adopted. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Community planning and infrastructure, 8A1, Powerhouse Springs new production well installation. Contract award.
Have to go find Mr. Wickham, who's in the building. Like that.
Why don't we take a 2-minute recess? Over the door. Over to you, Ms. Wickham.
All right. My name is Chris Wickham. I'm the Director of Engineering, and here to seek council authorization for the award of a consulting services contract for the Powerhouse Springs new production well installation consulting services to on-site engineering, an upset cost of $65,550 plus GST. The Powerhouse Springs well field is just east of town and is the primary source of water for the district. The well field consists of 7 production wells, and well 3, which was installed in 2002, has been consistently losing capacity. It was rehabilitated in 2013 and quickly lost capacity again. We believe there's a layer of fine sand just above the intake screen, which is clogging the well. So it's currently out of service. And the district budgeted $200,000 in 2018 to install a completely new well to replace well 3. So the engineering department sent out a request for proposals on BC bid for the consulting services to design the well. 5 competitive proposals from qualified consultants were received, and a team of 3 staff reviewed and ranked these and found on-site's proposal to provide the best value to the district. The scope of the proposal is for a detailed design, creation of a tendering package and tendering support for the actual construction contract, and then construction-related engineering services, such as contract administration and inspection. So this is within the district's $200,000 capital budget for the Well 3 proposal, and we seek your approval of the bid.
Any questions for staff? Are we sure we're not going to drill another hole with sediment issues? Like, how do we prevent the same situation from happening? And is it that much cheaper to drill a brand new well than to rehabilitate Well 3?
No, it is certainly cheaper to rehabilitate Well 3, which is why we did so in 2013, and then it just plugged again. So and that is why we're hiring a qualified professional to help us out in finding a better place to put the well. It'll be in a completely new location.
So we haven't even determined that yet.
That's right. The new location hasn't been determined. That's part of the scope.
Any other questions, Catherine? Is that a question? Go ahead.
Will it be within the same immediate area, or?
Yeah, in the same neighborhood for sure. Part of the costs will be to, of course, pipe down to the water treatment. So the further away it gets, the more expensive it is.
How deep down are we now? No.
I don't know the answer. Do you know the answer? I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
Curious if there was a plan to go any deeper, if it was viable to go any deeper, if it was looking into the future, would it behoove us to go any deeper?
The engineers will figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, depth and location will be within the scope.
Would someone like to move the recommended motion that we award building services for Power Springs and new production well installation to On-Site Engineering Limited and Mayor Covered Officer to be authorized to execute the agreement? Moved by Councilor Club, seconded by Councilor Race. I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. UBCM Asset Management Planning Grant Support.
Yes, thank you. So the district created an asset management plan in 2011, which was a significant step in our sophistication in planning for our asset management and upgrades, and drove significant changes in the funding models, for example, for sewer and water over a gap between 2011 and 2016. Part of that asset management plan was a recommendation to update every 5 years. So we're 1 year over, and the council budgeted $75,000 to update that plan in 2019. In 2018. And this will inform funding requirements for sewer, water, drainage, roads, dikes, sidewalks, bridges, streetlights, and our facilities, and really ties in all of the different asset management plans that we've been putting together over the years, and brings it into a single asset management plan and informs our long-term funding requirements. So the UBCM has a asset management plan grant opportunity, and this is a $15,000 grant that we're applying for, which would help offset part of the $75,000 that's already being funded by the district. And the basic questions that the asset management plan will address are: what do we own? What are the total replacement costs? What are the condition and remaining life of those assets? What's the annual funding required to sustain the assets? When do they need to be replaced? And what are the long-term funding requirements over the years? And how does that, on a risk tolerance basis? So this, I'm only here tonight to ask for a letter of support for our grant application to UBCM for the asset management planning grant opportunity.
Thank you. I'm certainly supportive of the grant application, but one of the things that sort of caught my eye was those questions in the report about what do we own, what is the replacement cost. And I know we talk about, the plan will have the ability to answer the following questions about water, sanitary, transportation, and building assets, including any natural assets. But I think there's another set of questions that we have to make sure we write out for natural assets. So what natural assets do we benefit from as a district? What are the deferred costs because we don't need to put infrastructure in place? What is the cost we would incur by damaging that natural asset? So I think to really have a fulsome understanding of how our natural assets fit into this plan, we also need that list of questions. They go hand in hand, and you can't answer those questions about natural assets with the questions we have here. So I just don't want to lose sight of that. I know we've tacked it on in brackets, like including natural assets, but they really have a different set of questions that go with them that aren't these questions. They're related.
Through the mayor, I agree. I think we're really breaking new ground on how we handle natural assets. We've had a number of meetings on which natural assets do we attempt to list and understand, and how do we understand them. Some are fairly clear on water quality, stormwater quality management, and that sort of thing, but it gets pretty gray pretty quickly on where we draw the boundaries, and so we'll be working with the consultants to figure out what is sort of the leading edge thinking on how one does this. It's a tricky question, and what are the right questions is probably the most important part of it.
And certainly there's a national group of communities now working on natural assets, so there's certainly information to be gleaned from what they're working with in terms of pilot projects. So we're not completely in the dark, but there's some guidance out there. But you're right, we may have to take a step-by-step process and start with what we can quantify first, and then move from there. But certainly supportive of this.
Further on the natural assets, I brought this up multiple years in a row, and I wrote I understand the well quite well after writing the paper for school and being schooled by staff afterwards. But my concern was always the water that fills the well. We rely heavily on glacier. A good percentage of our water comes from the glacier and from ground runoff, of course. And as the glacier melts, we'll have an abundance of water, but we don't really have a clear understanding of how long. I was reading papers that were written in our district that said that the glacier basically was only going to be around for about 20 years. And so that's a pretty big concern. And then we'd have to rely on rain. So the understanding of the difference between how much glacier runoff, the input, we understand our output, we don't understand our input of the wells. So my biggest concern is that we take the literature that's available on the glacier and understand when it's, with climate disruption, I'll say more than warming or cooling, that it may be growing, it may be cool, our area may have different effects. But basically, if some of those papers are correct, it's pretty dire, our situation with having to have a backup water well. And there are other options. So we're lucky we live in an area that we have a lot of aquifers, but some of those aquifers are already being given away by the province. And my concern is that, and it may be just a concern from not knowing what staff's working on, is that we're not being proactive in being upfront with the province about obtaining another water supply if it's needed because we're losing our glacier water supply. So
can we just tie it in with the asset management plan? I know it's related, but you're talking a little bit more about the well, but just tie it in with the asset management plan.
Well, it's natural asset. That's exactly an asset management. That's the glacier should be included in an asset management plan. We should understand that from the very top of where we get our water, we've placed it all in this one well, but our natural asset is actually well above the well. So understanding how long that's going to last, if it is melting, that would be, well, it is melting according to all the literature, but how fast it's melting is not really clearly understood. So I think that would be a good natural asset project. And if we only picked one, that would be my choice. I'm sure there's a bigger conversation, but that's always been the one, more water supply and the reliance on one well or a series of wells.
One source, yeah. Council has had this conversation before, and we do want to work towards a comprehensive natural asset evaluation within our asset management plan. So I guess looking to how does this step get us closer to what Councillor Elliott and Councillor Scarlett are talking about?
How does this step of the grant?
The grant.
Well, the natural assets are already part of the scope. The grant won't have an effect on that. It'll just reduce the impact on the taxpayer.
Exactly. Thank you. Any further questions? Will someone move that we support the application, grant application to UBCM Asset Management Plan opportunity? Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Structural Flood Mitigation Grant Support. Do you want to present this quickly, or do you want us just to dig into questions?
It's up to you.
I have some questions, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll be quick then. Again, this is seeking support for a grant application, in this case for funding to construct a sea dike along the Mamcombe Blind Channel at Huoneoak Park on the district land, the district park there. UBCM has a new community emergency preparedness fund for structural flood mitigation, up to $750,000. The second highest priority for flood mitigation in the district, according to our integrated flood hazard management plan, is at Huoneoak Park. We're planning a sheet pile dike similar to what you see in front of Sirocco.
That's where you lose me.
Okay.
We have not decided on a sheet pile dike in front of the park. We talked about it for developers, being able to do it to maximize their land. But in my mind, in front of our park, we shouldn't be doing sheet pile. We should be doing green shores. We should be doing a more mitigative, environmentally friendly structure. Because all that energy that goes into the sheet pile just gets transferred over to the far side. And whatever we can do on the downtown shoreline that isn't sheet pile is beneficial environmentally, is beneficial in terms of storm surge and erosion issues. And so I never thought we were at a point where we had actually determined in front of the park that it would be sheet pile. That discussion is yet to happen in my mind.
Yeah, I believe that the integrated flood hazard management plan specifies a sheet pile for that entire shoreline, and then green shores on the opposite shore, as you say, and then it transitions up near the park, up near the oceanfront park. It transitions there. So I believe that is part of the integrated flood hazard management plan.
We have to change that. Councillor Carr. Oh, Councillor Race and Councillor Park.
Thanks.
Councillor Race and then Councillor Park.
Yeah, thank you. So grateful to hear the comment, because I thought I'd missed something else again. So, because I've heard other solutions, I think we all recognize we have to have a dike of some form there, come up to a certain level. But in my mind, there was always a question whether it would be sheet pile or something else that might sort of softly go down to the waterfront and allow the continuation of things like paddling, access, and so forth. So I think that's a discussion, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a cost. We can apply for a grant, but whether it's sheet pile or not, I'm not sure. If we have to make that decision before we apply, then I think we should have a chat about that pretty quickly, because I don't think there's been a whole number of different things that have come up about that park. Parking garages underneath sort of some kind of a green layer of some kind, for example, and how that would impact the floodproofing and so forth. So yeah, it's definitely a discussion. And I recall the flood hazard management plan. In fact, I recall all the discussions around the start of that sheet piling program in front of the Mistral, which is now the, whatever they call it now.
Mistral.
Mistral.
It was Miro before.
Miro to Mistral, yeah, sorry. And how we wanted to go vertical and not kind of stretch out into the blind channel. But, you know, and I take your point, it's probably in the plan. I don't debate that, but I think as a council, we've sort of kicked around in our minds separately offline a whole bunch of different solutions for that one block. that I think we might want to explore, and this might be the time to start talking about that.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks. I still like the idea as a temporary berm, as a quick fix. And as I see the discussion going here now, that might be still the best way to go. We've probably lost, in the last 10 years, 50 feet of shore there. So I think it's worth councils to get their head around actually how much land we have there that's been sloughed away into the water. And if we're talking about parking structures or any kind of structure, we would probably want to follow the development to the north side, of gaining as much land as we can. And I know from the flood management plan that we have now, it's really important to get something along there. And if anybody ever walks along there, you see we're losing 20 feet of land a year. It's just sloughing away like mad. The trail's not even there anymore that we put in 3 or 4 years ago. It's gone. There's, a matter of fact, a barricade there so you won't walk along the trail, otherwise you'll slip in. So it's really important that we get some kind of bank stabilization and protection for the downtown from that high water. We get a surge and we're all going to be wearing gumboots in here. So in the original plan, as you know, it called for a permeable berm to be put along the edge. And I think while we're all non-permeable, while we're all discussing it, we should probably look at, there's an excavation going to be happening. Well, I guess maybe they already excavated it, but where the building is on Main and Cleveland. And we might get enough material out of that. You know, there's trucks hauling stuff out of town all the time. You've got the preload where Moreau is. All that preload's going to be coming out of there pretty soon. But I still think, you know, we really do have to do something.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. My question was going to be, where is that transition from sheet pile to Green Shores? And I think it's somewhere around our park. I'm happy that we are applying for funding, but I think we do have to have a discussion about what kind of dike and where. And I don't think it has to be sheet piling all the way down the land from Thornton.
So, with the comments in consideration, are we ready to make this grant application? Can we make this grant application and determine the treatment after?
Yes, I believe we can. So I think I'm hearing loud and clear from council that we need to make sure that everybody's on board with what this park looks like. This is a sensitive community decision, and you don't feel we've targeted or honed in on the right answer yet. So I think we can still make this application and then do a check-in with council, I'm guessing on times, but probably early summer or late spring so that we can get some preliminary numbers in for the budget for 2019. I think it is important that this project go ahead for 2019. So we should make sure before we start the detailed engineering, obviously, that we've got these large community sensitive questions answered.
There may be other grant funding opportunities with regard to the Green Shores habitat creation side of it as well. So this is for structural flood mitigation. But we may be able to, with a different treatment, that I find other sources of funding to actually achieve the result. And it may be cheaper. When we had the discussion about the sheet piling, it was really to maximize the buildable area for the developers, and not so much about the ideal treatment for the foreshore. The ideal treatment would have been Green Shores, for a lot of different reasons. One of which probably lasts a lot longer than the sheet piling things anyway. These sheet piling things supposedly are failing. after 70, 80 years, so we'll see how long they last. But anyway, so I just want to make sure we have that conversation. It may actually help us in our grant application if we're actually going for a green shores approach, so that may be worthwhile pursuing in the funding opportunity as well. Maybe make us more successful than a simple sheet pile. So I'm not sure how you want to proceed with that. You want us just to say, yeah, we support a grant application and leave it to staff to incorporate, or do you want to come back to a committee meeting and have a conversation about the treatment options?
I don't believe we have time to come back to committee for this grant application, and I don't think it's required either. I think that we can make the application based on the integrated flood hazard management plan, so that we need to have a dike of this height, and leave the rest to detailed design, and come back in a little bit more time. We also have to think about how the community space would integrate and transition to the other on both sides. So we'll need a little bit of time to look at what that would look like.
Councillor Wason, Councillor Carr.
Yeah, I was going to just move the staff recommendation, which talks about application to construct, grant for an application to construct a section of sea dike, because I think that term is general enough to allow any number of different treatments. So I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Wason, by Councillor Elliott. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, I couldn't see the amount that the grant was for.
750,000.
750?
So we'll need more support to do the dike. We'll need about $2 million in grant support to do the dike, the full dike.
Yeah, so this would do a design.
So we'll be applying for further opportunities as well.
The berm could be used for backfill afterwards, so it wouldn't be wasted.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Correspondence action requested. There's a letter from a couple different people with regard to EV charger installations. Council remembers we had considered a bylaw for 20%, and council decided to go to 30%, and for about a day and a half, it was the best in the province. And now a couple of municipalities are going to 100%. I'm wondering if we refer this to the Director of Development Services and will engineering, and we'll bring it back for consideration of the committee meeting. Next up.
I'd actually like to just, I've been trying to think of any reason why we can't go to 100. And it benefits, there's so many benefits to just going to 100%, and just moving the staff, basically it's an expense for the developer, but it encourages, and they can put it in every other spot. It shows leadership and sustainability. And if we want to go to EV, we can't build buildings that are 100 years old that don't have the option for EV. It means that people can put them in, but they won't have the capacity to charge their vehicles if they leave it and don't have the infrastructure put in right up front.
Yeah,
So-
hello.
Hello! Yeah, so I'd actually like to move that we go to 100%.
Let me just get some comments on that.
Absolutely.
Councillor Carr.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it going to staff before we bump it up. One thing that I am a little bit concerned about is you get 1,000 units or 2,000 units with a 40 amp breaker. You start adding that up down the line. You might just want to check to make sure before we require 100% that we have enough power for that.
John?
We could look at this further. We're doing this mini update to the cannabis, and we could look at it as part of that process.
The electric cannabis.
So why don't we do that? Why don't we move that it be included as part of the cannabis for council consideration?
That sounds fantastic.
Everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I agree. I'd like staff to do it.
It's if people want to move to electric vehicles and they're in these, we're building so many of these massive buildings, right?
I think a developer would be crazy not to go to 100% right now.
Yeah.
Because they'll be.
And we have so much
obsolete
hydro,
very
it's whether we
quickly.
maintain it for ourselves.
So, Councilor Shaw, do you want to move that direct staff to include for consideration 100% EV in new multifamily development applications?
Right now, the regulation says any shared residential parking, which is basically multi.
Whatever the terminology. Moved by Councilor Chappelle. Is there a second there? Seconded by Councilor Cryer. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll, why don't we just refer the letter to them as well, just I'll remove referral to staff. Seconded by Councilor Rice. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So they know what to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Thank you. There are 5 resolutions to receive your information, unless I see someone who wants to pull any of these things. I will look for a motion to receive all the above correspondence. Okay. Moved by Councillor Blackman Wolf, you're moving receipt. Second by Councillor Chappelle. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have committee of the whole meeting minutes for March 20th, regular business meeting minutes March 20th, committee of the whole March 27th, special business meeting March 27th. Move approval of those minutes. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Rice. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Recommended motion from the March 20th committee of the whole meeting and that the district direct staff to work with Easy Transit to implement September 2018 service changes. Moved by Councillor Chappelle, seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Foreign buyers tax speculation tax. That the mayor write a letter to the minister requesting the district include in foreign buyers tax jurisdiction. That was for the meeting before. At the last meeting, we said we're going to take a bit of a wait and see, get some more information back on the speculation tax, and then send a letter comprehensively about both taxes. So I'm not sure we need to move that first one or ratify that first one. And staff will have some information back on this, on some more background information on the speculation tax. Councillor Blackman-Wolf and Councillor Shaw. Oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering, it's just a letter. We're not moving policy, we're not doing anything, and maybe this actually will let them know that we're interested. It doesn't.
You've already sent that letter. You've already sent the letter asking the rationale and.
On both taxes.
Yep, but we haven't taken position that we want in or we don't want in. Or we don't have to say we don't want in because, but we haven't actually written a letter to say we want to be included. We have sort of written a letter to make them notice that we're confused by their decision.
I just experienced the first speculation with my next door neighbors. I'm seeing it happen in my neighborhood, so
it's definitely happening. Councilor Blackman-Wolf?
I just want clarity, like what other information are we seeking from staff? Because I remember, if my memory serves me well, that we were actually going to vote on it, and then Councillor Pryor just wanted more time to digest the actual meaning of the tax and what it applies to and all that. So are we having a presentation on that, or what's?
From my recollection, Mayor Heintzman, staff were to look into how the data was compiled and what numbers the municipality, West Kelowna and Kelowna had used in their letters. And so it was to bring back some more information on that data background.
Kelowna and West Kelowna had put out some conjecture numbers about the impact on their housing base, on their tax base, on, I can't remember exactly, and staff were going to do a bit of a look into the relevance of those concerns here.
That's what I
Fairly, we can certainly pass the foreign buyers one if you want. I just don't want to send so many letters to this confusing to the minister.
Yeah,
So we'll just hold off on that, I guess. Active transportation projects, that the district directs staff to begin implementation of the capital projects presented at the committee of the whole, subject to feedback. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I'm not reading this whole one out. Affordable housing program update and direction. There's a whole slew of motions. Someone want to move them? Moved by Councillor Black and Wolf. I'll second them. Any discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, I am still concerned with this project. I still haven't seen any financials. I know there was a discussion that I watched online and I didn't participate in, but this entire project, everything.
Buckley Street?
Yep,
Okay.
everything from the financing of it to the management of it is deeply concerning to me. I am not going to support this right now.
Let me clarify and then you can decide.
Okay.
So the project itself is coming for first and second reading in May?
May 1st.
May 1st. At that point, or even if it stopped there, then the money that we've received, we give back,
Right.
right? So we're not
It's just
necessarily,
guaranteeing the money.
yes. And so, is it correct, Gary?
Correct. If we choose not to proceed, all those funds will go
We
back.
can send the money back to the province. So if it gets through second reading, goes public hearing, third reading, at that point, so the actual process around the development is still to happen. This is not
Can I respond to that?
predetermining that. I just wanted to make sure you understood.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my experience has been that these projects get right the way down the road and then we end up, it's like a steamroller. We get into first reading, second reading, and then things pass. This project we've seen so many projects come forward now, with 12% affordable housing in them. I think we have a lot of projects in the hopper that are better projects than what we could build or manage on our own. I don't like individual projects that are just one sort of housing. I like mixed-use housing. I think we could do better things with the land without BC Housing. It's not, BC Housing money, without financials in front of me, I think that they run projects extremely expensive. And that we could have a better mixed-use project there if we wanted to use that land for that purpose. So I am going to oppose this. I don't really see any purpose with all the projects coming forward. We have an immense amount of rental housing coming forward. And without having appropriate financials, I think it's wrong to keep heading down the road and get to first reading. I just don't have any idea how much it's going to cost the community in the long run.
Could we, for our next meeting, just a little paragraph on how many housing developments BC Housing has done and manages?
I'm sure that's available on their website, but we can get that information.
I can answer that now in terms of what they manage, zero. They don't manage anything in town.
Well, what Sue said.
They fund.
No,
They
not
fund.
DC Housing funding. What we have as far as affordable housing, rental units coming online, and affordable housing coming
I'm
online.
trying to understand why you're opposed to this one.
I am not opposed to doing a project I am opposed to doing anything without having appropriate financials, without appropriate management. There's a lot of questions I have, and I'm not getting the first reading of a project without having the exact financial management of a project so that I know what the taxpayer is on the hook for. BC Housing is renowned for literally tripling costs, even though
Be careful how you articulate that.
I
Unless you
hope
have
that's
proof to
it's.
back it up.
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand.
I've talked to numerous amounts of housing coordinators who will not deal with, there's a lot of temporary housing projects going in now because of that exact reason. So,
Okay,
yep, that's my opinion, but I don't support this project.
I'll call the question. Okay.
Will we have the McCullough report back before May 1st on whether it's a housing corporation, society, or partnership agreement?
No, we will not have that question answered by May 1st.
Will we have it for public hearing?
No.
So I think that's where I stumble on this, is that how we manage that building matters. And I think the public should understand what our role is in how we manage that building before we go to public hearing. I actually think that's a piece of the puzzle. that we should say to the public, oh, we're gonna incorporate an arm's length body, or else we're gonna partner with someone to run this building. But I think going to public hearing without that information is not giving our public the full understanding of what we're taking on.
That's a substantial delay to the project. A very substantial delay to the project.
Councillor Buckingham and then Councillor Schwartz.
Okay, if I remember correctly from the last meeting, I mean, essentially, what we're saying is that, you know, we're taking a decision in advance of first reading to talk about the sort of operational structure, and that the district is interested in putting forward the land and moving forward in this process with our development consultant, Macola, and the BC Housing people to develop the business plan and all of that, and have that in place so that if everything lines up after the study done with BC Housing, then we hit go, and, you know, we move along with that. And to me, I differentiate, actually, like that's not a land use decision to me. It's actually a housing policy thing, and we've been moving forward in that direction for some time now. So I don't think it's like something new that, you know, today we're springing on the public. I think it's been in development, and it's true that it's not totally decided yet, but I mean, you know, as a real big fail-safe, all we would have to do is send out an RFP for a property management company to manage the units, and, you know, there are providers here already, and, you know, that stuff could be worked out. But I think it'll probably, you know, I am concerned that we will miss the window for the funding on that. And to me, my understanding of the District of Squamish contribution to this project is that we are not putting up a significant amount of capital, but we are putting up land. We are also putting staff resources behind it. But in the end, the idea is that, you know, it's financed at a low rate mortgage through BC Housing, which is guaranteed by BC Housing, and the rents pay for that. So we're not getting into subsidized housing. I think if we were, that would be a different conversation to have with the public, because that would have a very direct impact on property tax. But to me, it's a bit of a different project, and, you know, I'm just concerned that, you know, we can kick this around as long as we want, but at the end of the day, we kind of just got to make a decision. Either we're okay with this kind of project or we're not. And, you know, I strongly advocate for it for all the reasons that I've talked about in the past, but we got to do it, because otherwise, you know, it's another year loss, you know, a lot of time and effort. So.
But we don't have the land use decision in front of us today, and I think we do have to parcel this off. Land use is one thing. If after land use council determines not to move forward, we don't move forward. After land use council says this land use is okay, if the business case doesn't prove out, we don't do it. So, and what's in front of us today is neither of those things. Councillor Park.
Yeah, I just.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Spell, Councillor Park.
Councillor Park.
I would just think of the seniors that now we're looking at tearing down and building something new. I mean, that serves the community for 30 years. It was fabulous the whole time. Just a fabulous thing. At the end, they owned it. I see this as being that.
Yeah, I don't see this project as that. I see this as there's a lot of hesitancy I have in this, because I think that we're just building market housing. I don't think this is actually, I don't know the costs. I get that BC Housing is willing to build us, but there's a lot more to building and owning a building than just having upfront cash for the bricks and mortar. The management of it, the long-term maintenance of it, it's having a liability like this that's under district authority that we have to pay for. If I was able to see contracts, in my opinion, we hired Wacola to give us a way to either get to a housing authority and look for a way to manage housing. They went away and worked on this one project, and now we have this one project.
Council was very clear in their direction with Nicola.
When we spent the money, what they were sent away to do was develop policy and maybe have a shovel in the ground ready project. But now we have not a lot of information on it. I've never seen financials come. I don't know how we're going to manage it. We're going to go to the community with nothing
I'm
instead
going
of
to call the
this.
question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle opposes, motion carries. Thank you very much. There's going to be lots of time to talk about this in the future. There is one business arising that the regular business meeting of April 17th be held at 55 Activity Centre. Is there someone move that? Moved by Councillor Black-Wolf. I'll second that. We've actually already scheduled the public hearing for there, so we have to make sure the meeting's there too.
Third reading.
Third reading, I mean, of the OCP. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There are minutes from the advisory design panel. Move receipt. Moved by Councillor Cryer, seconded by Councillor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Finance and Audit Committee minutes be received. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There is a motion that the mayor write a letter to the Provincial Government Minister of Finance articulating council concerns regarding the cost of transition from MSP of the employment health tax to municipalities. I thought we were more specific in that motion, speaking to the 1 year effect for a local government. So I just want to make sure that the motion is reflective of that.
Yeah, my recollection is that we didn't want to criticize the government, that this is the right direction, but the abrupt, that one transition year is the issue, and we wanted to call their attention to perhaps helping municipalities smooth that.
So I'm just wondering if we should maybe tweak that motion to reflect that more clearly. Do you think you have enough there, Sarah, or not?
For 1 year transition, is that being?
Christina, does someone have a suggestion on how we might articulate this motion to be a little more clear? Councilor Reyes?
Yeah, it's a concern over the double charge in, I think it was 2019, where we ended up being charged in effect 1.5 times instead of just once. So it's the, I guess you just say, express concern over the additional charge, or additional taxation.
The transition.
For 2019 and then.
In 2019.
Can you move that, Councilor Elliott? Yes, please. Seconded by Councilor Reyes. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And Squamish Aqua Cycle Association that we enter into a 3-year commitment, and that alternate funding mechanism be investigated, and that the IPIMBA budget not be implemented, and the grant and aid policy wording is such that does not limit the ability of other not-for-profit groups to achieve multi-year grants. By Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Reyes.
So I'm going to oppose this, like, for the exact same reasons that I did in the committee of the whole meeting. I think this is the wrong direction in that community grants should be left as community grants. I think that if we wanted to actually fund a position, it should be a trails position. It should be put in the budget and given an appropriate budget, and that it should be done through recreation and not through community grants. I think community grants is a wrong place and just is the inability to make a decision to actually fund SORCA through a proper position. So I'm going to oppose community grants. I'm not opposed to having continuing funding for trails. I think trails are incredibly important in our community and deserve long-term funding. I just don't approve of continuing to go through community grants, even though this looks at investigating an alternative. We should have been investigating this for years. We've been giving them continuing grants for years. And I just think that trails have become important enough that we need a full-term position that should be funded in next year's budget instead of 3 years of continuing community grants.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Chappelle opposes. Motion carries.
Yeah, I know. And poor management doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
Well, and one of the things that we were very clear about was this is just a stopgap. It allows them to have certainty to go and leverage funds. In the meantime, we were going to look at something different. So I think this motion gets us there. We didn't have any cameras, so there were no camera announcements. There's no unscheduled attendance. Open question period for clarification. There's nobody in the room. Council staff announcements. announce?
Since everybody's actually spoken past the motion, nothing.
No,
I'd
we're
like
on
to say something.
announcements. Anybody have any announcements? I don't think we have any announcements.
Solid leadership.
No announcements, there we go.
Keep putting knocker in on the house.
Yeah,
Highly engaged community.
yeah, I just want to say a few things. Heartfelt condolences to the Harry family. We did send a condolence message to them. And also just with Fergie's and the fire last night, I don't know, it seems like 2018's just gone a little haywire on so many levels. Hopefully it'll settle out the rest of 2018. And I can't even remember stuff going on now, but I'll look for most of the meeting.
I just wanted to say thank you to our fire chief and his crew for being out this morning to respond to that call, and for him sitting here with, having been up since that hour of the morning and making it through the entire day. Not once did I see your eyelids droop, although over some serious coffee intake, but thanks to your crew and yourself for that.
I'll pass it on, thank you.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. I'll look for a motion to terminate.
Can you speak to you had the Columbians to do that, can you speak to that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, the Columbia, I forgot about that. Yeah, the Columbia Institute came up, they did a workshop tour in Squamish, and we took them to a variety of different places in town. It was a combination of school trustees and locally elected officials, and I think we went to West Coast Outbuildings. That was kind of cool to see. We went to Carpenter Brewing, we went to a dispensary, we went to the Adventure Center, we went to Quest University. It was cool.
When that happens, it would be great to inform council and offer us a chance to actually join you on the tour.
Yeah,
That would be
there was
amazing.
literally not one spot in the car.
I would be happy to
Yeah.
drive other people.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a reason not to invite.
Yeah, no, and this was something they organized, so, yeah, anyway, for sure. Okay.
Did you pitch them on hosting their conference in Squamish one year?
You know, I tried to get them to host it this year,
Yeah,
and they just couldn't get their brains around it.
'cause that's one that we actually have capacity. It's not a huge conference,
Mhm.
but it'd be great to have.
Mhm. And having had the BC Mayor's Caucus here, where we were at the hotel and we went up to Quest, it actually worked really well. So, yeah, so I think we have a bit of something to say, yeah, we can do something like that here. Okay, motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Blackman Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.